thank you so much for joining me today. This is ByteSized, and I am your host, Kyler Cheatham. I am from The Confidential, and I am joined by actually one of our clients and colleagues here, Michael Wood. And he is going to talk to us a little bit about a real life case study for his business that is undergoing an implementation with the support of our team. So before we get into introducing our esteemed guest here, I just want to go through a few logistics to remind everyone. If you are joining on any of our audio or video platforms, you can comment wherever you're getting this and we can see it. We always go back in and make sure to answer all of your questions and provide any additional resources. We also love your feedback. So if you want to let us know where you're joining us from, kind of if you're involved in an implementation, and then any sort of feedback. We're going to be talking a little bit about Agile today, which always is, kind of a divisive topic for our audience. So we look forward to kind of hearing your engagement as well to answer all of our questions today. You can get Bite Size wherever you get any of your podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel at Bite Size and at The Confidential that you can see our episodes as well. So now that all the boring stuff is out of the way, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we start, can you give us a little bit introduction? I know you're a leader in the IT space, but just kind of a little bit about you and your company.
Sure. So I'm the director of IT for a metals manufacturing company, and I run the IT organization for one of our plants.
Very cool. Very cool. And you're based here in the States, correct? Awesome. Very cool. For all of our global audience, Michael is on the west side of the United States. So always fun to have someone from that time zone where we can get some of our APAC friends involved as well. So with that, we're going to dive into a little bit about your implementation today. So I always like to set the stage with just talking about our goals. I think that's one thing in the industry a lot of times we miss is our why, especially right now with, things like forced migrations and sunsetting systems and deadlines. A lot of times we miss kind of the why. So when your company decided to go through this implementation, what were some of the goals that you were hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so we are replacing a legacy system. And so our number one goal was to replace the legacy system at the end of the implementation to sunset the application. Our number two goal, which really was the number one at the end of the day, which is no downtime to the facility and to not impact production as part of this. So, these were lessons learned from 25 years ago when they put their current system in. Back then they had downtime, they did impact production, and it was just something that we're not willing to do this time around. And so that those two together are the biggest drivers: feature parity and little to no downtime.
Definitely. That disruption can be a huge thing. And that's not a small feat, right? To implement and have absolutely no downtime. Because that especially with a plant that operates 24 hours and things like that, that can be a big piece to set as far as benchmarks. So
Yeah.
when we take a look at kind of what technologies you talked about your legacy systems, are there any other systems that you were looking at replacing? I know obviously looking at a manufacturing plant, we talk a lot about warehouse management systems, inventory systems, manufacturing execution systems. Can you tell us a little bit about what that profile looked like for your company?
Sure. So, having a late 25-year-old ERP system, there's going to be ancillary stuff connected to that, MES systems, homegrown systems, order processing systems, transportation management. Planning. Even the planning systems. So there are a lot of endpoints to the spider web that have grown up over the previous, 25 years. And all of those are in play, right? So, how do we integrate with the ones that we're not going to be replacing? For example, our engineering and maintenance system is not being replaced.
Okay.
And so our preventative maintenance, asset management, that kind of thing, developing this implementation to integrate with those was a key foundational item that we had to address. And so, which kind of led us down the path of how we are implementing and the things we did ahead of time. We laid a lot of groundwork, specifically in the MES space as well.
Yeah, MES has come so far, even in the last 10 years, just the innovation, I think, in that area of the industry has been, really transformative. So, in talking about a lot of those integrations, we see a lot of those spaghetti bowl type of systems. How did you go about kind of figuring out what you have now and what you wanted to change?
Yeah, so we actually kind of came at that from two different directions. So the first was we went through a business process mapping exercise.
Mhm,
So we brought in some folks to facilitate that, and we followed, industry standard business process mapping notation. And we went through and mapped all of our business processes from a high level, and we followed the ERP standards, so quote to cash, procure to pay, design to develop. And so we followed those methodologies and we mapped our processes. Well, while we were doing that, we were identifying which systems do the people do these efforts in, as we went along, and we sort of created an initial straw man. Then
mhm,
we bounced that up against some legacy documentation that we had to understand how up to date that was and what
mhm,
were we missing. And then we actually went to the legacy system and said, okay, what all systems are pulling data and pushing data
mhm,
to the legacy system, and we merged that all together and came out with a fairly robust picture of what ancillary systems are talking to what.
mhm,
And then we actually kind of went down the road of, okay, how do we decouple these
mhm,
into a service oriented architecture?
mhm,
Started wrapping stuff in web services, and then we implemented an enterprise service bus platform to start developing and migrating those
mhm.
so that we could kind of lay that foundation ahead of time.
Absolutely. I think that that's so incredibly smart too. A lot of people forget to use their legacy vendor as part of this process and remembering that there's still very much a partner involved in that can help with those integration points. So when we look at integration, that can be quite complex because when we're looking at requirements for a new system, a lot of times those integrated systems either go away or they become a custom integration. What was your process there? Were you trying to go like totally off the shelf, or were you trying to do something a little bit more hybrid when it came to utilizing some custom integrations?
Yeah, and so because we took the idea of a service oriented architecture
Mhm,
service bus platform and decoupling our systems,
mhm,
so we were able to look at, okay, I have application A, I have wrapped its integration into a web service,
mhm,
and then I use my service bus to talk to system B, and through its web service, I could easily decouple, implement something new on one side or the other, and it doesn't matter, right? So that it's transparent to either system of what's going on the other side. And so making a decision about what gets replaced and what doesn't makes it a little bit easier for us
mhm.
because there isn't really a have to replace. There's a
Yeah.
want to replace.
Yeah.
And so that is helping us kind of decide, okay, I don't have to put a ton of effort into scoping this ancillary system
Mhm,
and how does it play. I've got the backbone and the infrastructure in place to kind of set that to side for now and make sure that I can map my data on one side of my connector and it's completely transparent to the other side. So it
mhm.
doesn't care. So
Yeah.
that is one of the things we did on the MES in
Mhm,
particular.
mhm.
We made the decision early on that we weren't going to extend our ERP interface to our operational floor. We
Okay.
were going to use our MES platform for all operator interfaces in the
Mhm,
future. So we've been migrating those operator interfaces to our MES platform and then using the service bus to talk to our business systems to pull the information they need and to provide the information. So that now, when we're heavy into the ERP side of it, the operators aren't impacted, right? They do their stuff the way they've always done it, and it's transparent to them. They don't care. So I don't have to go train, 1,000 employees on the new ERP interface.
Yeah.
They don't care,
Yeah.
and so that's been super helpful.
Yeah.
The other part of it is we can look at the capabilities of the new system
Mhm,
and pick and choose. Like, for example, if the new system can easily without impacting scope and schedule this capability, then we'll put it in. But if it doesn't, then it's fine. We'll deal with it when we have to.
That's awesome. I think that's, really smart approach to kind of meet the needs of the entire organization. A lot of times that's not considered when we look at the needs of the entire business and selecting an ERP system. So, and thinking about what that looked like as far as the migration, you mentioned data a little bit. I assume you were going from an on-premise environment to a cloud environment or a hybrid cloud type of environment. Can you talk
Yeah,
about that transition a little bit?
yeah. So our ERP system that we're going to is a cloud-based one,
Mhm.
but our service bus is we run that on-prem. So
Okay.
we do our development testing in the cloud, and then we deploy the job running on-prem.
Okay.
So, and then our MES is on-prem.
Okay.
So if in the event that we lose internet or whatever with our ERP system, the service bus can queue all those messages, and then once internet is reestablished, then they can process those transactions and there's no intervention on our side. So
Mhm.
it lends a little bit of robustness to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of our stance. Now we do have the capabilities of
Mhm.
bringing that system down to on-prem.
Mhm.
We do have a private cloud on-prem that we could run it in. So far, we haven't had a need for that.
Yeah, no need for that. Absolutely. So you do, I would call it the minority approach still in our industry, but one thing that you do is a lot different from a lot of our other clients is you have kind of an agile approach or just an agile setup in your
Mhm.
organization when it comes to IT. So can you talk a little bit about why you chose this path or even how it is to lead an implementation that's 100% agile?
Sure. So because the number one, two goal of the implementation was no downtime and minimal impact.
Mhm.
So we made the decision that we wanted to be able to have the capabilities to run the facility in both systems.
Mhm.
And the parallel, sort of the traditional parallel is
Mhm.
dual entry,
Mhm.
big data migration
Mhm.
efforts, and all that. Well, when I sat down and was trying to strategize on that, I went, what if I did this in an agile methodology
Mhm.
and then do a high level of integration
Mhm.
between the two platforms using our service oriented architecture so
Mhm.
that I could bite off small pieces of the process. Since we did the process mapping, I could
Mhm.
say I can focus my effort
Right.
here, integrate the systems, and then implement what the business needed for that piece.
Mhm.
And then they can just continue to do their work like they would in the old system.
Mhm.
Good example of that is customer entry.
Yeah.
So I can have a user go into the new system, enter a customer, and it goes and it creates that customer in the old system.
Mhm.
That does two things for me. One is it allows them to continue to do what they need to do in the old system. If there's a problem with the new system,
Mhm.
they can still go into the old system
Mhm.
and put the customer in. And the integration actually goes, oh, I need to take that customer you just created in the old one and create it in the new
Mhm.
and vice versa. And so what that did for us was got rid of the need for big data migration
Yeah.
because the systems keep each other up to date. And so when we were ready to say, okay, I need all my old customers in the new system, we just said, okay, let the service bus do what it needs to do. And it went and created all the customers in the new system.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So no data migration, instantly up to date. I don't have all these iterative, like
Mhm.
I upload 1,000
Yeah.
records and then tomorrow I have to do a few more, and the next
Mhm.
day I need to do a few more. That's all gone. And so that was super helpful. And then we just, work with our internal customer on, what's your next priority in your process map that
Huh.
gives you the biggest bang for your buck. And
Huh.
then we lay that out, we implement those pieces in the new system that now takes over for the old system. And it's kind of that death by 1,000 cuts to the old
Yeah.
system where
Yeah.
I just take little pieces
Yeah.
all the time till they're not doing anything in the old system.
Yeah. So, what would you say to the objection that we hear a lot with that dual approach of, well, now I have to maintain two systems that run my overall? What would you say to that?
So that's where that tight integration comes from is
Mhm.
I'm not really running two systems,
Mhm.
right? I'm effectively migrating my user interface to the new system. It's still the old system running like it always did. And then over time, I do less and less in the old and more into the new. So then my new becomes my single source of truth over time, and the old one just kind of fades away. I mean, it has its challenges. User adoption is the biggest one, right? How do I keep my users from going to the old one and doing stuff there, right?
Yeah.
And we tackle that through one, they drive the priorities,
Yeah.
right? They tell us what they want and how they want it to be done. So there's an instant, well, it's going to be better in the new system anyways.
Mhm.
Plus, our system is only one step up. Our old system's one step up from a green screen.
Mhm.
And so they're happy to go to a new, more modern interface,
Mhm.
and it gives them more capabilities. And so that's kind of how we're kind of tackling that adoption phase. And but I mean, there's still holdouts, but we try to keep them involved, and we try to keep them part of the process to get the buy-in.
Absolutely. And I love that, overall just mindset that IT is a service to the business. I think that's a very,
100%.
yeah, that's a modern way of looking at things as opposed to our IT is a cost center. Well, actually, IT can drive a lot of value as long as, you're willing to be a part of the business. And we kind of break down those different silos in that type of structure.
100%. That is my operating procedure. is is
Yeah.
is the only reason I'm here is to support the customers, our
Yeah.
our internal customers.
Yeah.
We don't even refer to them as end users, they're customers, and our job is to make them better. It is not to play with new technologies,
Mhm.
and how do we make things better for them. So yeah, that is definitely my philosophy and how we're doing. I do want to add back to your other question, because there was a part two to that,
Mhm.
which was another reason why we went down this highly integrated approach between the
Mhm.
new and the old. Was, if you can imagine, most of the people who implemented that old system have retired long time ago, and so there were nuances to the old system
Mhm.
that we knew we didn't know.
Mhm.
And so by tightly integrating, it forces us to go figure out those nuances in the old system to make sure that we can integrate. So it uncovers that hidden knowledge that we didn't know.
Yeah,
Plus the agile method, I mean, that's one of its whole thing is you don't know what you don't know.
absolutely.
And so
Yeah,
you can't plan for it.
yeah.
And so that was another reason behind that methodology was we know we don't know stuff. We're going to find it as we're integrating it. And so we need to be able to be able to turn on a dime.
Absolutely. And again, that discovery type of perspective I think is so healthy when it comes to IT leadership, especially in a space where we're looking at a system that we do need to kind of excavate those nuances to it that we didn't implement because those stakeholders have exited the business at this point. It's a 30-year-old system. That's one of those things where you have to really understand what all of those processes look like and those functionalities.
100%.
Yeah. So the agile approach, you mentioned this a little bit, but the implementation approach is kind of going business by business unit. We kind of look at that piece of it. I'm wondering kind of if you could give us some perspective around just the understanding that a lot of times that can be a nice proof of concept or add value faster, right, to the business as opposed to that big bang type of approach. Some industry theorists think that the big bang approach is going to be the way that you get the value the fastest. I wonder if you can give us that perspective.
Yeah, so no. Your implementations take, 12 months, 18 months, 24, 36. You don't get any value until
Mhm.
that's done, right? So
Mhm.
with our agile approach, we can, if we can get a solid minimal viable product to the customer, they can start using that right away.
Mhm.
And I'm going to go back to my customer analogy. Our old system was horrible about how many screens you had to click through to enter a customer.
Mhm.
The new one is, a fraction of that, and it's way faster for them to do that. And so it's we were able to get value to them very
Mhm.
quickly. And especially since they are looking at their processes as part of the holistic planning process, and they're pinpointing that's where I'm going to get my biggest bang for my buck. And so that's where I want to go to next.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Yep.
and I guess the last question I would ask you on, like, myth busting the agile methodologies here is, a lot of times agile can get this overall perception of kind of loosey goosey, or we don't meet deadlines and it's lacks standardization, it lacks discipline. What would you say is your perspective being a leader of an implementation and an agile team regarding that?
Yeah, I mean that's there. So my first thing is agile is anything but standardized, right?
Mhm,
You have your events, your the your retrospectives, your sprint planning sessions, your backlog grooming sessions. The process is very standard. To be honest with you, having been doing agile both here and at other companies
mhm.
for way longer than I want to admit, they're 2 week waterfalls.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what you're
Any
talking about,
Yeah.
right? You plan your work, you work your plan, and what it all it really provides you is the ability, however your sprint duration is, to reevaluate your plan,
Mhm,
and to look at where do I need to pivot. There is a pothole out there that you have to keep an eye on, which is that the schedule part of it, right?
mhm,
Is I could sit and do sprint after sprint after
mhm,
sprint and deliver stuff through all of that and change and pivot and everything else. But at a certain point, you have to say, my objective is feature parity with
mhm,
my existing system
mhm,
first, because that was
mhm,
our goal, right?
mhm,
Not all companies will define that goal.
mhm,
So you have to keep your goal in mind, because with Agile, the product owner or business user, SME, or whatever you want to call them, has the ability to change the direction and the priorities. And so you could fall into the trap of, I'm implementing something new that
mhm,
is value add to the
mhm.
organization, but is not feature parity with my existing system.
Yeah.
And so having a strong steering committee that can sit there and say, that is not
Mhm,
part of the goal of feature parity
mhm,
for you guys. So that's got to get put into the backlog
mhm,
and readdressed later.
mhm.
And so that is a gotcha that you have to watch out for.
Yeah.
But having that strong goals
Yeah.
that you have to meet is super important.
Yeah, and I would argue, that happens even in a traditional waterfall approach. It's just called something different,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yep.
just, there's shifting priorities that happen all the time when it comes to needs of the business, especially in today's digital age, right? Where we are constantly evolving. And I told you it was the last question, but I have one more question. And then I
Yeah.
promise I'll leave you alone about the agile. But so I also feel like when it comes to agile, when it helps IT morale a lot by celebrating kind of those micro wins or mini waterfall implementations, and helping them to see that they are achieving something, and going through a situation where they're maintaining their current system, but they're also implementing a new system. It's no secret that's a lot of resources and time to utilize. Do you think that that's something that is helpful as far as just implementation morale as well?
Yeah, the small wins more
Mhm,
frequently, absolutely. Also, because we're implementing this in small bites, with each bite that the group takes is one less thing in the old system that people are doing.
mhm,
So it's that, oh, I hate supporting this. I'm constantly having problems.
mhm,
Well, guess what? In 2 weeks, you're going to implement the fix for that,
mhm.
right? And 2 weeks later, you're going to fix for this one and the fix for this. And so it gives them a horizon line to shoot for,
Yeah.
on both sides, right? So it's, yeah, we put this in, but at the same time, you got rid of it from over there too.
Yeah, that's such a good point and well said. Not only gives the IT team, but also, the business these kind of milestones to be able to understand, hey, we are actually doing something over here. We're achieving that, which can be very hard when we're looking at, bigger complex implementations. I mean, even asking our ECC to S4 HANA colleagues, they're over there, in the trenches for 24 months trying to at least get one small micro win out of there and keep their teams efficient.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've implemented 6 or 7 different ERP
My
systems in my
goodness.
career,
Yeah.
and so I will say there are some that lend themselves well to agile and there's some that do not.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Very politically said. I love that. I love so looking at kind of those micro wins or challenges, is there some challenges that you've experienced and maybe give us some ideas of how you went about solving them?
Yeah. So our two biggest challenges, one was having a implementation partner that understood agile. So getting them on board with the agile process, and how we wanted to do that was contrary to what they'd ever done, right? A lot of implementation partners have their implementation processes that they've baked in, they got it, they know it. That's and having them come in and flipping their whole world upside down was a challenge.
Yeah.
And so that is one I would definitely caution anyone on is either find a partner who's willing to change or a partner who has done it
Yeah.
and has experience, which a lot of implementation partners they do their development work agile anyways
Mhm,
for their own modules and
mhm,
add-ons and things like
mhm,
that. So it shouldn't be too much of a stretch. It's
mhm.
just translating that to their implementation teams.
Yeah.
So that is one of the things that we did was we actually told our implementation, go back and talk to your own development teams about how agile works and have them help you
Yeah.
because we got our own thing to do. And so some of them did and they came back, they're like, oh, I totally get it now. And they were providing their story point sizings and they were able to jump right in and do their planning and everything else. So it clicked with those people when they
Mhm,
realized that, oh, this isn't that much different.
mhm.
And so that's one way. The other big challenge I would say is make sure your product owner who's from the business, your subject matter expert, whatever, is versed and trained in what it takes to be a product owner.
Mm.
That is something that we did as we actually got into it a little bit too far. And we had to, like, okay, our product owner, go learn product owner
Yeah.
training, go understand this because the vocabulary is different. The events and celebrations are different,
Mhm,
and so getting them trained. But the biggest one was MVP, minimal viable product,
mhm,
getting that product owner to say, yes, I am willing to run my department
mhm,
with this minimal viable product for a time
mhm,
while you come and implement these things
mhm,
to grow it. Getting that sign off and that buy off is critical to success
mhm.
but also a hurdle.
Yeah.
No sales manager, no production supervisor
Mhm,
wants to go, okay, yeah, I'll live with this decremented capability for a time and I'm going to live with that. And getting them to go, oh, I get it. I get why I need to do this because I can go to my old system and finish my process. I'm not doing dual data entry
mhm,
because you've integrated it and I know I'm going to get this thing
mhm,
in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or on a cadence. And so I'm okay with that because I know I can start getting value today. I can get more value in two
mhm,
weeks, more value in 2 weeks, more value in two
mhm.
weeks. Once that shift
Yeah.
happens, it's amazing to be honest with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it just I'm sure it takes some time for them to really understand what that looks like. I've never quite met anyone in organizations that's like, "Woo, let me talk about like all of these different functionalities that are going away during my
Yeah.
implementation process." Like, so
Yeah.
it's always a kind of a difficult conversation, but I know you really those to really look at the product owner relationship and understanding how they get them on schedule, how they get them involved.
Yeah.
So that's really important too, I assume.
So my project managers, we actually employ business analysts to help write user stories
I love that.
and
Yeah.
do backlog grooming to take some of that weight off of the actual Scrum team.
Mhm,
And so I've effectively said, business analyst, project manager, go be our product owner's best friend.
mhm,
Go sit with the people actually doing the job and see what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis and get to know what they do so that you can help write user stories that are effective. We are a publicly traded company, so our ability to audit our implementations and our go lives and what goes into
mhm.
production is uber critical for us and our
Yeah.
processes. And so making sure that our user stories and our acceptance criteria are written in a way that facilitates user acceptance testing and auditability. That has been a hurdle that we've had to overcome, but I think we've done an amazing job with that.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It definitely it's one of the unique pieces about your organization is you really do work together as like a chain, and a lot of times we don't see that support from the IT leadership side. It's kind of like, go PMO, like good luck to you. I'm here, I guess, if you need me, if there's a huge critical issue. But you guys don't operate like that. You really do operate from the top down of what your expectations are and just the support of the overall business and implementation is something I really admire.
Yeah, we have a really strong steering committee.
Mhm.
It's the highest levels of plant management, and we've got a dual sponsorship. So
That's great.
I'm the tech sponsor and the budget sponsor, and then one of our senior directors on the other side is our sponsor. And so between the two of us, we do a lot of talking. Our steering committee meets frequently. We raise up issues. We break down barriers, and that has been probably instrumental in where we're at.
Absolutely. Yeah, that steering committee is so critical. And a lot of times we forget that that alignment is a journey, right? It's not just, okay, let's meet the steering committee, set the goals, goodbye. We'll see you, in next quarter or something like that. It's something that really does need to steer the direction of the implementation. And a lot of times organizations forget how important that collaboration is to ensuring that you get actual value out of your technology.
Oh, 100%. And in an agile methodology, getting agreement to the MVP, sometimes that's one of those where it actually makes its way to the steering committee of,
Mhm,
look, we can deliver business value today
mhm,
if this is our MVP.
mhm,
And the business side is like, well, we really need to have X, Y, and Z
mhm,
to go live. And sometimes the steering committee is like, yes, you have to have that. Or
mhm.
other times I've been like, no,
Mm,
not really.
yeah.
You could get value today. And so but that's all part of the process.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Those conversations need to be had.
Mhm.
So, kind of on the flip side, what are some of your biggest successes or rewards or wins, would you say, in this process?
Yeah, so I think, right off the bat, I'm going to say one of our number one successes has been that service bus
Mhm,
foundation that we put in. We're idea that I don't have to do data migration. We've seen it work where you just turn it on and it does the syncs for you. And
mhm,
that has been a huge win. But also the fact that we've been able to build those integrations with other systems and have the ability to say on February 1st, you're getting your information from legacy system.
mhm,
And every transaction after X, you get from the new one.
mhm,
And then we walk away. And
mhm.
on February 2nd, when the transaction rolled over, it started getting its stuff from the new system. It was so simple, so stressless, so seamless to the integration.
Yeah.
That has been a huge win for us.
Wow.
But then the learnings, right? So the tight coupled integration learnings. I mean,
Mhm,
we've found things about our old system, like built-in integration rules around how do I process an order,
mhm.
how do I plan this. There's rules that were built 25 years ago,
Yeah.
no one knew existed,
Yeah.
and it just happened,
Yeah.
right? And so as we were building it and saying, okay, I'm going to upload this order into the system. Oh crap, I need this, I need
Mhm,
that. This rule was enforced here. And so we were able to find those.
mhm.
And the funny thing is, one of our retired developers, we have a little thing we do every year with them. And they're like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. And I was like, so even if you hadn't retired, we still would have not
We
known
still
about
wouldn't
that.
have known.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was a big win.
So it's like it's kind of like going through grandma's basement. You're down there like, what is this, and why do
Yeah.
we have it?
Oh yeah. Yep.
That's
100%.
great. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, back to looking at understanding each step of those implementation processes, not only kind of the understanding of the new system, but that integration point where you did kind of prove a different way to do data migration. Is that, just out of curiosity, something that you've done before with other ERP implementations. It's just so unique to me. I think
Yeah,
it's so
no, it,
cool.
it was so in my last implementation, we did a big system and it was a big bang and with big data migration, millions of records
Mhm,
type stuff. And I was watching us do it and we had an old service bus platform
mhm,
that we were using. And the whole time I was like, why can't I use my integrations
mhm,
to do these migrations?
mhm,
And it was just something I was kicking around. And then I went to work for in a professional services
mhm,
organization, helping big companies migrate their stuff to the cloud.
mhm,
And I worked with a company that had a very robust service bus platform. And we kind of, we were looking at, okay, how do we move your stuff to the cloud?
mhm,
And it was one of those where I had that light that was just like, well,
mhm,
you could use your service bus to send
mhm,
stuff up there.
mhm,
And then I was talking with their leadership and they're like, oh, yeah. And so they used their service bus to port their data to the cloud versus trying to do massive data uploads to the cloud. And one, it helped them sort
mhm.
of throttle their
Yeah.
data
Mhm.
so that they didn't incur one giant hit for cost to the
Yeah.
cloud. They were able to kind of choke it off
Mhm.
and incur those costs over a
Yeah.
longer period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it worked great for them. So I was like, okay, my next software implementation I do, I am using my service bus to do
Yeah.
my data.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's definitely something that is just one of those like nuanced pieces. A lot of times when we don't have senior IT leadership that understands data migration, we can accrue those kind of big bang costs or outsource it, right? A lot of times we kind of don't want to deal with it. It's not the most fun thing to do and let someone else kind of just handle it and take care of it. But again, it's still, I love the approach that you guys take of like, we have to know how to do this and own this. If we don't, if we just outsource all of that type of different project ownership, then we won't be able to sustain it moving forward.
Yeah. No, and it's, and when you do a traditional data migration too, you're doing some data hygiene, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we actually build that in as part of our process. So if I'm integrating two systems, I want to make sure that no matter what the clean data is going
Mhm.
both ways, right?
Yeah.
So we built that data hygiene into the process
Mhm. Mhm.
instead of trying to create all these rules
Mhm.
and stuff, and we pull data out, we run it through a bunch of hygiene processes, and then we upload it in and hope it works,
Mhm.
right? And then if it doesn't, we figure out why, we do some more data hygiene, and then pray that someone was documenting all that
Yeah.
data hygiene stuff in Excel and
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
No, ours is built into the integration.
Yeah.
We do the mappings, we build the transforms, and the transforms are the hygiene.
That's awesome. That is a really cool innovation, definitely, and sounds like it's worked so well for you guys, for sure. So, for the kind of status of your project today, what's going on with it right now? Because you're not finished with the implementation, as far as I
Correct.
understand. There's some other things that you're looking at. So, what are some of your statuses that you're working on today?
Yeah, so I mean, we're releasing code into production on I think the sprints are every 2 weeks, but once you get through, user acceptance testing, go live processes, an audit review, that kind of thing, it's about 3 to 4 weeks. So every 4 weeks we're implementing, the stuff into it. We've implemented but we started with our sales organization.
Mhm,
One, it was a good way to cut our teeth. Second of all, when we started, they were at a good point
mhm,
in the sales cycle.
mhm,
And so we've been trying to get them live 100% on the platform.
mhm,
We've implemented customer management, contract management. We're getting part management. So
mhm,
we did fundamentally change the way we manage parts.
mhm,
We went more to a attribute based part system versus
mhm,
a discrete part system. So that was a fundamental change that
mhm,
we've been working on. So that part's done, it's vetted, tested,
mhm,
and so now we're focused on sales order entry, and
mhm.
that's kind of where we're at. So we've got stuff in production that people are getting ready to use. We're implementing more and more code into the environment, and now we're focused on the last piece for our sales, which is the sales order management.
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, it's once we have all the right fields,
Mhm.
it's locked and loaded.
Very cool. Well, congratulations. I mean, that's huge, huge progress for sure
Yep.
for you and the rest of the team. And
Yep.
so I always steal this question from Adam, but when you are done with the implementation and someone goes, wow, that was super successful, what certain things needed to happen? I know you mentioned like your goals up front, but when you're kind of finished and you're like, that was a success, what are some of the things that needed to fall into place?
Well, I could say my definition of success is that our production rates for our product delivery didn't change.
Mhm.
I don't see any sort of degradation to our ability to make metal
Mhm.
change from the
Mhm.
implementation. That to me is success. And then our on-time delivery to our customers,
Mhm.
which is something we pride ourselves on,
Mhm.
was not impacted by the implementation. To
Mhm.
me, that's success.
Yeah.
Whether or not it takes a little bit of extra time or that we had to, put a little bit more effort into integration to make that happen, that's okay.
Yeah.
And so that to me is success. Also, the ability that if we were able to get this implemented the way we were wanting to, the fact that let's say 5, 6, 7 years from now, we, with AI and machine learning and things like that we say, you know what, there is a better widget out there
Mhm.
that I can implement that extremely quick
Mhm.
and no other system is even aware that
Mhm.
we swap that out. To
Mhm.
me, that's success
Yeah.
because we came from a highly coupled, tightly integrated manual environment to one where I can swap any business system out I want. And my production and operating processes, people, and systems have no clue. That's a win in my book.
Absolutely. Quite the definition of an agile environment, right? Being able to be flexible enough to change those things out and, setting up, we call it future proof, which I despise that word, but we future proof, right? So that we really can have that ability to be innovative without completely disrupting our current state, which is, so, so critical.
Yeah, 100%.
So, if you were to kind of talk to some industry peers or any business that was, in heavy manufacturing, process manufacturing, what do you think you would tell them as far as some key lessons that you learned?
So back to my, having strong partners on the business side, making sure that you've got a strong product owner who
Mhm.
understands it, and also a clear defined goals. Ours are very clear, right? Don't
Mhm.
impact production, have feature parity so that we can shut off our old system. Those are clean, smart goals, right? And don't be afraid of the integration work,
Mhm.
right? So the new technologies and new capabilities that are out there make
Mhm.
integration so much easier.
Mhm.
And so don't don't be afraid of it, but do your due diligence and get a platform that works well for you
Mhm.
and how you work. Those are the keys in my book. And then your implementation partner,
Yeah.
making sure that you've got an implementation partner that
Mhm.
understands the
Mhm.
what you're attempting to do,
Mhm.
and why,
Yeah.
right? Because the worst thing is implementation partner that doesn't understand why.
Yeah.
So they're always sort of trying to steer you
Yep.
back
Yep.
to
Yep.
what's comfortable to them.
Yeah.
That is super important.
Yeah, and I mean, you being on kind of both sides of coming from the enterprise IT and being in professional services. I think sometimes people that haven't had that experience, it's hard to understand the dynamics of each relationship and just understanding kind of the agendas involved. And it's nothing nefarious or anything like that. It's just they have a certain agenda, and you have to understand that you have to own your enterprise goals and make sure that they're showing up as a partner for you to really service those enterprise goals, not just the technical implementation.
But yeah, 100%. I mean, they're so an implementation partner, they're looking for success just as much as you are, right?
Absolutely.
They want that white paper, they want that customer reference. That's what they're shooting for because that's what's going to make their next sale. And so
Mhm.
they're always going to want to go to something that is comfortable to them.
Mhm.
And frankly, this is a different way of doing it.
Mhm.
And not everybody's going to be comfortable with it. So it is having a conversation with them of the why. Why am I doing it this way? Why is it important? What are the benefits to them as well? And getting them to buy in on it, and not just their sales group, not just their executive
Yeah.
management, but your actual implementation team.
Yeah.
Getting them to say, "Yeah, we're on it. We
Yeah.
get it. We understand." That's critical.
Absolutely. That partnership is so important. And it's something, it can kind of be a little bit of a frenemy situation at some point. And that's a lot of times why it takes that transparent goal setting and kind of going back all the time and celebrating those micro wins, involving your partners because they worked hard at it too, right? So having that collaborative relationship is so key. Well, Michael, it's been such a pleasure to have you on today when you are kind of at that place where you feel like you've made your end goal, and we appreciate, of course, you collaborating with our audience. Our goal here on Bite Size is just to always have a transparent conversation around what is possible in the marketplace. You, as someone that's implemented a variety of ERP systems or just enterprise systems in general, understand that each implementation is different, and really understanding showing up and owning your system and goals is the way that you achieve success on your terms, not a vendor's terms, not an SI's terms, but your terms as an enterprise.
Yeah, no, it's been great conversation. Love to see more people go down this path so it's easier for me in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a unique path, and that's something that we often preach a little bit about at the Confluential is agile is not the enemy, and if you see it like that, you are closed-minded because there's a lot of organizations that do it very successfully as long as you have that strong IT leadership in place to lead the charge on what is possible for that approach. And it's not something that's for everyone too, but at least considering it is going to give you the best option to choose your migration or your implementation strategy.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I've worked on systems where I would never attempt this. I've also worked with companies that I would never even think about doing it this way. That is one of the cool things about our company is that we are a heavy manufacturing traditional waterfall projects. We're really good about putting big machinery in the ground, and you do that in a waterfall method. But they were open and curious and understood the how this would help them achieve their goals. And so I'm thankful that they're like, "Yep, well, let's do it."
And we're thankful too, because usually in heavy manufacturing, it's like, no, absolutely
Yeah,
not. Like, don't
yeah.
even say the A word when you get in here. So excellent. Well, this has been such a great conversation. Again, we are so grateful for your insight. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. If you do have questions for myself or for Michael, just drop them in the comments. I will get them to him, and I'm sure he'd be happy to give us some additional insight on that level. We are live at least every week when it comes to you can ask our team's questions on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time here in the United States. You can join us live, any sort of implementation Q&A we have for you. You can also get Bite Size wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube. You can also visit our website at theconfluential.com for our Agile playbook as well, which I'll link below in the show notes so that you can kind of look at what does it mean to be agile and start to, kind of investigate if that speed to value approach is right for you. So thank you so much to Michael again. Thank you so much to the audience, and we will see you next time.